So welcome to this week's Optimal Health Clinic Facebook Live. This week I wanted to talk about why nutrition patients should be also considering either working with a practitioner or indeed working with themselves on some of the psychology work that we use here at the Optimal Health Clinic. And no doubt at some point in the future I'll do the opposite video, why people working on psychology should also be looking at the nutrition side. And another way of thinking about this is, in a sense, why is working with the mind and the body crucial to facilitate and support recovery? So I'm not going to go into all the specifics around psychology and how we work. We've done lots of different Facebook Lives covering some of these different pieces. But what I will say, just because I think it's always important to say at points like this, is talking about the role of psychology in the context of ME chronic fatigue fibromyalgia does not mean that in any way I'm promoting or suggesting that this group of illnesses are psychological in nature. They are very clearly real physical illnesses, and like a lot of chronic illnesses can have psychological components, and often the way that we approach the recovery path can have an impact on that process. And I'm going to also answer this video a little bit looking at it from the perspective of how, as practitioners, we approach this. So, for example, a nutrition practitioner, some of the checklist points that they might use of when it will be appropriate to be referring someone across, or indeed suggesting that they work and look at more of what's happening on the psychology side. So the first thing specifically is related to what we technically call the maladaptive stress response. And the maladaptive stress response is when our nervous system is overstimulated, and that's having a significant impact on our body's ability to be in a healing state. So put another way, we have sympathetic over-arousal, overstimulation, and where therefore the body is not healing as it should do. So one of the symptoms of maladaptive stress response, although this is not the only factor causing this particular problem, is when there are a lot of reactions to supplements and foods. Now, I'm certainly not saying that this is the only cause of food reaction to supplements, and a number of other causes that can be there, but it can be a significant factor. When our nervous system is overstimulated, what tends to happen is our immune system tends to be overreactive. One of the examples I tend to use around this is it's a little bit like pre the London bombings, going back however many years ago that was now. Someone would leave their gym bag on the bus or on the tube, and no one really cared. It was like, well, someone's left their gym bag. Soon after that, anybody left anything resembling a package that could be the size of a bomb on the underground or out of the bus, the whole network got shut down and everyone went into a big reaction about it. So more responsive, bigger reaction. So hyper arousal around the issue drives bigger reaction. Same in the immune system. System is over-responsive, starts to see things as dangerous that actually may not be, and then perpetuates a reaction cycle to it. Not the only cause of that, often can be a cause. What we often see is when we calm down the maladaptive stress response, we see those kinds of reactions tending to settle down and calm down. So that's one of, as a nutrition practitioner, that's one of the examples of where if someone is intolerant to lots of supplements and foods, and that can even make it difficult for a nutrition practitioner to do their job, then they may well refer someone towards working with a psychology practitioner. Another example would be just more like generalized anxiety. If somebody is, in consultations, it just clearly is the case that they're just a lot of kind of overstimulation and fear and anxiety, and often there are all kinds of reasons why that might be there, and often they're very reasonable reasons. Like someone's had many crashes and relapses from overdoing it, and so now there's a lot of fear around activity and doing too much activity, which is trying to protect them. Obviously, it makes sense. Another red flag would be if somebody is always trying to do every piece of the protocol obsessively perfectly, and so is, you know, measuring out every supplement, taking it at exactly the right time of every day, is being incredibly perfectionistic around food where it isn't necessary. Sometimes if someone's doing a particular program for a period of time, a very rigid approach can be appropriate. Other times, and much of the time, we will tend to suggest more of an 80-20 approach, that we're very on it 80% of the time and a bit more relaxed 20% of the time. And if someone is having so much kind of tension and anxiety of trying to get every bit of the protocol right, then that's probably a metaphor for how they're approaching everything else in their life, which is a clear sign of an achiever pattern, which is, again, something that we would be looking to work with. If it's the case that between appointments, somebody is not following through on the protocol and the stuff they're supposed to be doing because they keep prioritizing other people more than prioritizing themselves, it's a clear indicator of a helper pattern. You know, so it might be that someone's been set off very motivated to follow protocol, and then someone in their family's had a difficult time. They spent the whole time supporting them rather than supporting themselves. That would be another red flag. Not pacing effectively. If someone is booming and busting up and down all the time, although that you know, there's different kind of facets to that. Often, what's driving that are things that we had to have a lot of experience working with on the psychology side. Things like achiever patterns, things like helper patterns, things like doing things too much from a point of view of anxiety, issues around the inner critic, so lots of self-judgment and pushing ourselves, issues around what we would call the inner child, where we're just completely ignoring our own needs, and then we get this big backlash where we just end up self-sabotaging. Then, you know, there are also some specific examples of physical symptoms which might also be instigators in terms of doing more psychology work. So there's a lot of pain. Pain obviously can be structural in nature. Pain can be nutritional in nature, down to deficiencies in magnesium and various things. But pain can also be emotional in nature. Sometimes emotions that have not been expressed emotionally, that emotional pain expresses itself physically. So, as you can kind of see, there's a lot of pieces that can become clear from the perspective of a nutritional therapist, that can become clear that doing work with someone experienced, working with those on the psychology side, can be crucial and be important. And that's just the kind of some of the lenses, some of the kind of the red flags, as we call them, some of the kind of lenses that would come up for a nutritionist working with someone. That's obviously not the only, it's not a kind of definitive list of reasons of why someone would do psychology work. It's just some of the things that kind of might flag up. And the kind of reason to do this video is if you're someone that's working with one of the nutrition team and you are encouraged to come to psychology, to realise that you're probably not alone, you're certainly not alone in that experience. And these are some of the kinds of things that it's helpful to understand a bit more about that. So I may well do, if it's useful, do a video from the opposite perspective. And I'm just seeing that Melanie's posted a question. She's asking, she's right, thinking unlikely program incorporates aspects of various other psychology approaches, and the answer is yes. We have our own set of tools, and our own set of tools is influenced by a number of other pieces. And our psychology approach has been around for about 15 years now. A lot of these other things, their application to ME chronic fatigue has come online over the years, and we've trailblazed some of that, and we've also followed all of that. So hopefully that's been useful. Please, as always, share questions, comments underneath. Feel free to share the video. And also continue to let me know, this video came out of a suggestion, continue to let me know topics that you think would be helpful to cover. I do keep an eye on the comments, and that's often where these videos come from. So thank you for watching, and I look forward to talking to you again next week. Bye-bye for now.